Hi everyone, I'm Jen. Here's a multitasking unexplainable, and this one was when I thought I was dying. I found out later that I was passing kidney stones, but at the time I did not know what was going on. It was in the middle of the night and I was crawling on the floor in so much pain I could not stand up, and I finally just was making enough noise that I woke my husband up, and I asked to go to the emergency room, and I was able to get my neighbor on the phone, and so she watched our two children, and my husband got in the car, and I was just having difficulty walking and putting myself in the car. I was in so much pain, and also not knowing that it was not a life and death situation would have been helpful, but he was already waiting in the driver's seat, and it was annoying that I wasn't getting in the car, but I couldn't. My body was in so much pain that I actually left my body. And I was just looking at his annoyance. I was looking at my body trying to somehow form itself to be able to get into the passenger seat. And I just remember thinking, and this is key to the story, is I felt like a single mom, because I had to go get the babysitter, and I had to just, I don't know, I felt like a single mom. I wasn't in a good space anyhow, so I'm not here to bash anybody. I just wasn't in a good space. And so anyhow, I go to the hospital, or we go to the emergency room, and, they do give me some medicines, and then my husband and I are in a small room, and they're watching the stones go through me. Whatever it was, I don't know if it was an ultrasound, x-ray, I don't know what it was, but I was in we were in a small room with two other techs. So this is when I get my unexplainable, and I know I sound like a TV psychic, but I was so used to it that I didn't even, and so drugged up and in so much pain, I just didn't even care what it looked like at the time. And but I was getting the name Ramona, so here I sound like a like a TV psychic, and I hate that word because I do not like to be labeled as anything like that. But I asked the techs, are they named Ramona? Do they know anybody in their family, or do they know anyone that's named Ramona? And they just look at each other like I'm cuckoo, because I am. But they were not named Ramona. They did not know anybody, and normally an unexplainable always has a sweet little ending, and I just couldn't figure this one out. Meanwhile, my husband, just like non-Emmers, they do not get the Emmy effect, and we just have to love them and be patient with them and hope that they can do the same for us. It's the same with my unexplainables. So when I met my husband at age 17, we were both atheists. We were both, you live, you die, you decay. So I'm the one that changed on him. So it's not his fault that, somewhere along the line these unexplainables started happening. But so he's a non-believer and annoyed that I'm now doing this publicly. But with the pain and the drugs, I just didn't care. And so the thing is, it was never resolved. So we get home, and I recover for a few days, and then I go back into work. And the lady that I job share with, normally we're working opposite days because we shared the same job, but just to get me back in, get going at work, I tell her about this Ramona thing, and I said, I know I sound weird and everything, but she said no, she was very comfortable with it, because she shared a story how she was drowning. I don't know if it was a pool or in Lake Michigan, but I think she was in Michigan, and she was dying, but she was pulled up by angels, and so she believes in these unexplainables. So then she pointed out that we worked at a school, that one of the teachers, whom we all knew as Mr. This or Mrs. That, but one of the Mrs. her first name is Ramona. So I'm like, oh, of course. So maybe this is it. So I left a note in her teacher's mailbox, and before lunchtime, she checked her mail during break, and so she came over to me, and so I told her, I said, look, I have nothing to sell, but sometimes I see things, know things, feel things, do things. I don't know what it's mean, but the name Ramona came to me the other night, and I don't know if that means anything to you. And she grabbed my arm, and then she made with her eyes a motion like, don't talk about this while we're at work, with our boss, the principal, right around the corner, which she's right. I just forget about these earthly silly rules. But so anyhow, during lunch break, we walked around the soccer field and we talked, and sure enough, her mother, who had passed, this teacher was going through a difficult time, and she had always turned to her mother. Her mother was her best friend, and she had, hi Nelson, that's my little kitty, Nelson Mandela. But so she had prayed for her mother to come through as a sign that her mother is still with her, because this teacher was feeling alone with, and her stuff is personal, so with the things that she was going through. And so I come home, and I can't help myself, but I have to share with my husband when, later on that evening, I said I'm so confused, and I'm only sharing this with him, as I explained to him, because he was there in the ER when this name Ramona came. And so I said, the thing is, the unexplainable is not leaving me. Usually it leaves me when the job is done. And so then he, the non-believer, is explaining to me, look, the name comes to you, it's a unique name, and here this woman who has this name is praying to her dead mother and her, and then, you hear the name. And so he's trying to convince me that the odds of all these things happening just are beyond coincidence, and that this would satisfy the unexplainable. And this is where the multitasking part comes in, because I said, oh my gosh, you're trying to convince me that this unexplainable is real, and you're believing in this. And I wished I never said that out loud, because he then realized he was believing in it, and then it disappeared for him. And so for that little bit of time, as he was explaining it to me and trying to convince me that the unexplainable was working, it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing to have him be in that space, to know that there is something more than just this earthly life. And anyhow, that disappeared. But so the feelings still didn't go away. And then the next day I go to work, and my boss, the principal, says, isn't it cool that I spoke with your cousin? And the cousin in Utah, and I just pretended that I knew what she was talking about. My cousin and I, we were estranged for family reasons for a long, long time, for years and years. She was my summer sister, but then as an adult, things happened, and just families had to choose sides, and I love her, and she loves me. We honored each other on our birthdays and Christmas, and we honored our children, and even though she's my cousin, I call them my nieces, and I love them, love them, love them. But we were not as close. And so I didn't want to say all that to my boss, the principal, but I went and called my cousin in Utah, and she just chuckled and said, I thought you were going to call me. And I said, yeah, what's going on? So here's this cousin who's a teacher, and it turns out that she co-wrote a book, and she and the co-author we're interviewing all these schools around the country to edit the book, have the students edit the book before it was published. And that's how she ended up talking to my principal. And when my principal described our school, it's kind of unique, 40 acres of woods, and including farm animals and the highest education possible. So that kind of made it sound familiar. She goes, I think my nieces go there. So anyhow, so this is the third part of this multitasking thing, where unexplainable, because it reunited my cousin, and she and I are, with each other again, and it was beautiful. We talked for an hour or more, and then just catching up, and it was just beautiful. But the unexplainable was still not going away. So I mean, I didn't even think that it was connected, but with her. But then towards the end of the conversation, right when we're ready to hang up, I said, wait, tell me about this book. What's the plot line? And she says it's about a single mom who goes to the hospital, and her name is Ramona. So that's my unexplainable, and the box got checked off, and the unexplainable job was done. Thank you so much for listening, and I love you lots.